It's been a day full of magical press conferences with lots of information that's very much FPL related. I'm back with the fourth iteration of the late mail for your viewing pleasure prior to the deadline stream tomorrow at 9 a.m. I cover all the press conferences. I've actually watched or listened to almost all the 20 in full. So I've got all the info from there. There's been lots of injuries, some that we didn't even know about, some that potentially other players might be back a bit sooner than we thought as well. And then I look at midfield replacements, my hot takes, and then we will be finishing off with the cards calls. And I've got 8 more of them this week. Can it keep up its amazing success rate? We'll have to wait and see. Before we go any further, smash a like on the video. Leave us a comment with what you think of the cards calls at the end of this show. And if you haven't already, please consider smashing that subscribe button. With that being said, let's get into it. Hot off the press, game week 4, here we are, and look, there's so many things to get through. We're going to start with Glasner. He hopes that Sarr, Wharton and Nketiah will be fit for Liverpool, which from the last time I checked is very unfortunate, particularly for me because I own Sarr. Game week 4, game week 5, he's going to be out, which means that potentially he might be back for game week 6. So it's one of those ones where you're like, do I need him before then? Is it worth keeping? I'm not sure. Jeremy Pino is good to go. So he's going to be, I would imagine he's going to start for Crystal Palace in their game, just because of the fact that they need some attacker to replace Sarr. He also said that Uche and Canvo could be involved as well. But again, they're new signings. Realistically, they're probably not going to be starting, you wouldn't think. Pereira confirms that Jorgen Strand-Larsen is out. Now, thankfully, that's one injury problem I don't have to worry about, but a lot of people do have him in their forward lines and potentially are going to be impacted by the fact that he's going to be out along with a couple of others. Yeah, not ideal. Then we're on to Bournemouth. Cook training, but he's not 100%. Smith is also out there, and basically Iraola was very non-committal on the internationals that return. Basically said, they've all come back. We need to see how they go. In fact, that was quite a common theme through most of the managers' press conferences in regards to the players coming back from international duty, unless there was an actual injury. Then we went on to Unai Emery and Aston Villa. And look, Sancho, Elliott, Lindelof, all going to be involved or in contention to be involved, should I add. Sancho and Lindelof obviously are slightly behind Elliott, who pretty much was literally with Liverpool prior to coming to Villa. So if you wanted my guess on what that meant, basically, Elliott could start. The others are realistically going to be in the squad, potentially on the bench. Martinez and Cash should also be fine post their international concerns. So again, that's something to keep in mind there. Silva and Fulham, I mean, that was exactly the same thing, really. Everyone came back fit, and we'll see what they look like when they recover from their different excursions. Obviously, players have come back from all over the gaff, so that is obviously going to play a big impact on what players get played. Now, the last two, I've literally just slammed in together because I was running out of space and I didn't want to do a fourth slide for one team. Xavi and Colo, I'm just going to leave him as Xavi and Colo in contention for the squad. So that's the new signing. Simmons and Kowolu Moani, who I keep butchering his name. Sorry, mate. Solanke's still out. Everyone else is pretty much fit. So, Spurs do look pretty strong for this weekend, you would have to say. Aina is out injured for Nottingham Forest. He obviously got injured for Nigeria during international duty. Zinchenko obviously misses out as well because he is on loan. But that's pretty much all you need to know from that. What you get from Nottingham Forest at Arsenal, anyone's guess is probably better than mine, let's be honest. So on to Manchester United, and this was a really interesting one. So Cunha, Dalot and Mount are all out injured now. He talked about the fact that Cunha reckons he's pretty much good to go, but Amrin basically said he's out, and that's probably a medical thing. I would suggest that Cunha's probably going to be available potentially for Chelsea at least the week after, which will be game week 6 and Brentford. So I don't think that he's going to be long-term. A bit like Sarr, it's just frustrating. I've got them both in my own team. The big news here to take out, though, is Le Mans will not be starting in goal. Obviously, Dalot out means that Dorgu, you would think, comes back in at left wing back as well, unless he plays Mazraoui out there, who's back obviously fit. But Flappy Bird is starting. So Bayindir is starting. Le Mans will not be thrown into the Wolves at Man City. So Haaland if he gets a ball in the air, there's a good chance he's going to score because we know what Flappy Bird likes to do. At Arsenal, Arteta confirms that Saka is still out and he's working hard to get back fit, but he's not going to be available. Saliba and White trained so they could feature. So again, that's going to be one that he's going to have to wait and see. Hincapi trained and he's ready to roll. So he's had 2 days worth of training. He's pretty good there. Manchester City and Pep talked about the derby. He was very coy on whether Donnarumma will start on Sunday. I kind of think that he has to. Like, he's that high of a profile goalkeeper. Why on earth would he not be starting? He just played for Italy during the international break. Wouldn't make any sense if he didn't. The interesting news, though, where we already knew that Marmoush was going to be out and Cherky was going to be out and Kovacic was already out. But Ait-Nouri is also going to be out. Also, John Stones is still a doubt because obviously he pulled out of the international squad for England, so potentially he could be a problem there as well. How was Coy on a Walter-made start? But let's be honest, he confirmed that Wissa and Ramsey are both out injured. Wissa probably not too long-term. Ramsey probably a little bit more, few weeks on the sidelines. But if Wissa's not playing, they surely have to play Walter-Mater up front. Like, I don't see any well, but they don't. Jolinton obviously is available as well, so that's really good news for Newcastle's midfield. So yeah, David Moyes though basically said that he didn't say this, but he basically said that he doesn't rate and die, and that maybe he's digging his grave at the moment. I'm not sure. No, he is a doubt. Let's be a little bit serious here. He is a doubt along with Mikalenko, but the fact that Moyes raised it in a press conference would put great concerns about whether he will be fit tomorrow. He's also happy with the Roll signing. I mean, I don't know if they even know if that's how you say his name, but I'm just going to call him the Roll signing. And then on to Brentford. Nilsson will be involved. So obviously he came from Arsenal on deadline day. Coyote has recovered from his illness that obviously impacted him during the international break. And Yanelt is also available. So some pretty decent updates there from Brentford and Everton for FPL managers across the globe. And then on to the last section of the press conferences, and Ballard is still a doubt. Potentially he could be available, but basically he said he was a doubt. He was happy with the transfer window and talked about Brobby being a different type of striker and players potentially not getting as many minutes as they want, etc., etc. Chelsea's press conference was interesting. So Palmer has been training and he's a wait and see. Liam Delap is going to be out for 10 to 12 weeks, which makes me think that João Pedro is a really good option for that period of time. However, he basically also said that the Brazil players haven't trained. They've come back late, which, as I said, predicted. Mark Gui, and he talked about Tyreek George or whatever being options in the number 9 position. Talked about Garnacho's fitness, who's working up to that. But basically, I don't think that João Pedro is going to play 90 minutes based off what we saw there. But he has to start. They haven't got another forward unless he literally... Maybe he just sees the fixture and thinks we'll just try one of the others. I'm not sure. But yeah, interesting news there from there. Potter basically praised for Igor and Wilson and Fabianski, who's obviously returned to the club. Unfortunately, he's no longer 4 million. He's up to 4.5. Maybe that's a sign that they think he's going to be going back to the starting goalkeeper. Fulkrug apparently felt some calf issue, but at the moment he's fit, but they are going to be monitoring that prior to the game. On to Burnley. Parker praised their opponents, Liverpool. And again, common theme of the press conferences, all players came back fit from the international break. So there we go. Leeds, not quite so good news. Perry is going to be out, which basically he said that Darlow will probably get the nod in goals. That's a 4 million goalkeeper, but it's not a long-term injury, so don't get your hopes up going with 2 4 million goalkeepers on wildcard. Probably not a good option. Mchekia has obviously picked up some sort of a knock and could be an issue. And Purdue and Tanaka, again, are doubts. And then he talked a little bit about the transfer window, but look, there's some good attackers that are out for Leeds, so maybe that does increase the likelihood of a Fulham clean sheet. On to Liverpool and Arnie Slot, everyone came back without a problem. Jones is out, but he didn't really give an update on Frimpong, but based on the fact that he pretty much said everyone was good to go, I would imagine that Frimpong's right. He's also had his red flag removed in FPL as well. Isaac, though, is likely to be eased in. He basically talked about, if Sweden can only play him for like 12 minutes or whatever, we're not buying him for the next 2 games, we're buying him for like the long term. So again, I wouldn't be thinking that Isaac's going to be sitting there rolling up and starting this week, but he probably will come off the bench at some point, probably for Ekitike. And then lastly, Brighton. Everyone returned from international duty fit. Again, very common theme that we saw in the press conferences. March and Webster are still out. He talked about Agrew to start potentially, but let's be honest, it was very vague. And then he talked about Belieber probably trying a little bit too hard and probably needs to sort himself out, so that way he gets more game time and stays on the pitch for longer rather than coming off for early subs. But yeah, that was pretty much all the press conferences covered today, hot off the press for Game Week 4. Let's roll into the main stuff. So defensive issues, and look, popular options including Milinkovic, who I own, Sells, who I own, Murillo, who thankfully I don't own, and Williams, who FYI, the cartel are all looking to sell this week. They're literally all doing the same transfer. It's hilarious. Or talking about the same transfer anyway. Whether they do it or not is a different story entirely. But essentially moving Williams on for like a Palace defender or something like that. It's just jokes. It's like a bunch of sheep, really. What to do with them after Ange's arrival? Now, that's the key question. Again, I think originally I had Nottingham Forest assets for the first 6 game weeks, and I think that's still going to be my plan. I'm going to go and play them at Arsenal because, look, I've got injuries in my team and I'm not going to take minus points. But again, that's something that definitely needs to be monitored. Then another interesting point is, do you play Juve this week if you have a Spurs attacker? Now, lots of people have Juve in their teams or a West Ham defender or whatever, and they're playing Spurs, and quite a lot of people have Kudus, who's over 30% owned. Maybe lots of people are bringing in Xavi early, or they've got a Brennan Johnson. Realistically, you don't really want to clash, but I think this week it's going to be inevitable. Like, I actually think that Juve's a very good chance of getting another attacking return against Spurs. So for that reason, I don't think there's any harm in playing him. Maybe the issue is actually playing a Spurs attacker. I'm not too sure. Will Newcastle, Liverpool and Fulham keep clean sheets with their easy fixtures? So obviously Newcastle have Wolves, Liverpool away at Burnley. Fulham obviously have Leeds at home. I mean, Fulham don't keep clean sheets in general. I've already seen that for the first 3 game weeks. But if there is any weeks where they're going to keep them, this should be it with the fixtures that all those teams have got. And then do you really need a Palace defender versus Sunderland? Now, I don't have one in my team. And I didn't buy one with my defensive transfer I made this week. I obviously bought in Senesi for Cuyper, obviously because I was a little bit hamstrung. But I could have gone for like a Richards or a Gahey from Palace, but I just chose not to. I just think that post this week, they don't have, like the fixtures in general, you don't sit there and look at them and go, that screams clean sheet. Even against West Ham in game week 5, I just don't think, like West Ham could easily score, let's be honest. Specifically with their exertions now in Europe, about to crank up again as well. And then the last one, which kind of came a little bit out of left field. Do you replace Ait-Nouri? Now, we did not know that Ait-Nouri was injured until Pep said it in his press conference. Again, a lot of people probably have already sold him because he's already obviously dropped when he was injured and went off injured the couple of weeks ago in game week 2. But, I mean, that's concerning. That's like the second kind of injury he's already had this season. That's not ideal, and it's not what you want if you've got 6 million as a defender sitting on the bench when you've got other options like Cuyper and that just seem to be getting the job done. So I don't know. I'm glad I'm not in that position. I've got him in draft, and so I'm just going to bench him. But yeah, I don't know. I think I could be open to selling him if I had him in my own team. So injury-riddled midfield help. And look, do you need to hit the free hit or the wildcard buttons if you have 2 injured midfield players? Now, I've got 2 injured midfield players myself, Cunha and Sarr. I'm not hitting wildcard. I'm not hitting free hit. I'm just going to roll them, play 4 at the back. So this is why I went with a strong bench at the start of the season. For these kind of weeks where I don't have to sit there and panic and use a chip that I don't really want to use with not enough information to base it off. Now, if it's reported, as we've seen today, potentially Cunha and Sarr might only be a couple of weeks. Palmer could be back within the next week or so. Saka, again, not too long term. And they're only going to miss game weeks 4 and 5 potentially and be back for game week 6. Do you hold them? Like, I actually think that I'm going to hold Sarr. I'm not sure about Cunha because I feel like I want to free up some money to spend on my defence moving forward. But it's definitely something I'm going to look at, but I'm probably not going to make a decision this weekend. I've already made that one transfer, as I said, and I think I'll just wait. Now, is it worth bringing in Eze and Gyökeres early before game week 7? Now, again, I'm not sure. I don't think I'd be targeting Forest thinking it's going to be an easy game. I don't think it will. They've just sacked the manager. They're either going to play for Nuno or they're going to play for Angel. They're going to play for both and hopefully get some sort of a positive result. Now, this is not me saying they're going to. They could easily get thumped 4-0. I just see that with Saka out for Arsenal, I don't really see the appeal of buying Arsenal attack until game week 7 based off that information. They've got hard fixtures in game week 5 and 6. I don't know if I'd be going there. Should you be concerned with United midfielders over the next 2 weeks? Now, I actually think that Cunha being out is really good news for Bruno Fernandes. There is a strong possibility that he actually plays in the number 10 position. Being a Man United fan, unless Amarin's willing to play Šeško from the start, it's going to be Xerxes up top, then Mbeumo on the right. Ahmad doesn't really play on the left. You'd still expect him to play at right wing back, particularly with Dalot out. So I think there's every chance that Bruno actually goes back into the number 10 position this week, like without Cunha there. So I would not be concerned about that at all. And if he's back in that number 10 position, he's more likely to be involved in attacking returns. So for that reason, I think that there's no reason to even consider getting rid of Bruno. If you're considering getting rid of Bruno, imagine if he'd scored that penalty against Fulham in game week 2. He would be 8 points clear of Mo Salah. And Mo Salah cost 14.5 mil. Just keep that in mind. And Mo Salah's never going to get you DC points. So he actually has to get an attacking return to justify his price. Just keep that in mind. Then lastly, which is the best midfielder to probably get as a replacement out of Semenyo, Odango, Enzo, and Paqueta? Well, I'm going to answer that in a bit more detail right now. So, Semenyo obviously comes in at 7.4 million. He's risen in price 4 times already this season, which is pretty unbelievable, to be honest. Enzo, 6.6 million, has risen once in price. Paqueta has actually dropped in price by 0.1, which is unbelievable. And then Dango obviously hasn't done anything, 6%. Now, I bought these 4 players because they're not the 4 top scoring midfielders that you can buy, but I just wanted to show the different variations of ownership, and you know, their average points per game is all pretty similar. If you ask me for my personal opinion, I would probably go with Semenyo based on the fact that at the moment he's got ridiculous XG numbers per 90. So 0.6 and 0.05 expected assists. He's also not in Europe, which is what I really like about him as well. And Bournemouth, as we saw in the other videos I've done this week, actually have a really nice fixture run for like the next 6 weeks. They don't have horrible fixtures, so you would think that he would actually be a really good asset. Now, the one potentially that I think is really just going to go under the radar is actually probably Enzo. Now, lots of people say he doesn't cover Palmer, but I will say that if Palmer's missing, we know that he's on penalties. He just seems to be involved. Like, I know his numbers, his XG numbers obviously high because obviously the penalty, et cetera, et cetera. He's at 0.63 per 90, 0.13 expected assist per 90. He's got really good assist threat. And a lot of people don't recognize that. Since last season when he's really got going as a player at Chelsea, he's actually been really, really quite underrated. And I think he's going to be on track for another amazing season. And at 6.6, I think I prefer him to Semenyo because of the price and the fact that he's owned by significantly less players. The one thing that does concern me, though, is that Chelsea are obviously in the Champions League. That starts this week, potentially gets rotated, which leads me on to Paqueta and Dango. Now, the fixtures are a little bit middling for both West Ham and Brentford, but they're not horrible fixtures in any way, shape or form. But this is where the data is, there hasn't been enough games to actively gauge this. Now, according to the data at the moment, Paqueta's on 10.67 DC contributions per 90 and Dango's on 11.45 per 90. Again, this is based off 3 games, so this is highly likely to go down, I would think. But again, Paqueta's scored 2 goals. Dango's obviously scored 1. He's only had the 2 starts compared to Paqueta's 3. I think the West Ham are going to be a lot better, particularly with Fernandes now in that midfield. So I actually think that he's really worth a shout. And we know that he's on penalties for West Ham. And the other good news about these 2 players is they're both, again, not in Europe. You won't have to worry about rotation. The only thing you have to worry about is either the fixtures, the form, or injuries. And I think that is definitely something to take into account when you're making moves now that Europe is starting. I dare say we're just going to see a lot of rotation, which is why I'm kind of leaning towards Paqueta, Dango, and Semenyo over Enzo, even though I think that Enzo is the one I like the most out of the 4. So again, you do have to take European competition into account, and it's going to be interesting moving forward. So on to which Liverpool attacker is best for you this week. And look, lots of people said that Isak's not an option. We know pretty much from that press conference today that he is going to start on the bench. Now, we're going to start with Ekitike, who has been the top scoring attacker for Liverpool through the first 3 game weeks. So he's owned by the most, well, not the most. He's up to 29.7% ownership. He's risen 3 times in price. He's got 2 goals, 1 assist. He's got the best XG in numbers out of the 4 by a country mile. He's actually got more XG per 90 than the other 3 combined. So 0.53 per 90. Assist threat, not really there. But the problem is he averages the least amount of minutes. And now if Isaac coming in, you would expect that potentially to even drop down to like maybe 70, maybe somewhere in the 60s potentially. But he's going at 7.3 points per game. And I think this week against Burnley, he should be perfectly fine. So if I was buying one this week, I'd probably say that he would be the one I'd want. Now, if you want slightly better long-term thinking, I actually think Cody Gakpo's the next best. 7.7 million. He's only 16% owned, so he's still owned by less than what Wirtz is, and Wirtz has done nothing. I know he's looked half decent for Germany, and he's been kind of involved. And the numbers combined actually is the second highest when you then look at Cody Gakpo and Salah's XG plus XA combined. He's got 0.29 combined. Salah's only got 0.22 per 90 for XA and XG, which makes it's just hard to believe. And Cody Gakpo sitting on 0.27 combined. And the DC numbers are pretty middling for Wirtz and Gakpo. And let's be honest, bar the first game week, Mo Salah's doing exactly what we expected there. It just comes down to how much money you want to spend. So I quite like, and I quite like covering the Liverpool attack by spending the least amount of money possible, which is why I went with Cody Gakpo in the first place, and I thought that Mo Salah was going to have a huge drop-off. If you ask me this week who's going to score more points between Gakpo, Wirtz, Ekitike and Salah, I really have no clues. There's every chance that they all score. There's every chance that one of them scores a brace and then the others do nothing. There's every chance that they spread it around. But I think the money is on them spreading it around. Based on what we've seen from early doors from Liverpool this season, they do share the points around, and they've been sharing the attacking returns around. It's not like last season where Mo Salah was doing everything. It's not the case this year. So if they're sharing it around, the most logical sense, if you're buying this week, is to buy Cody Gakpo, because he's the cheapest. You don't have to waste money, and it just means that you can enable the rest of your team. So if you want my long and short of it, maybe I'm kind of biased because I've got Cody Gakpo on my team, but I think that he's the next best. But I think that Ekitike might potentially be the best one of the lot this week if you were having a Liverpool attacker. You never know. Isaac might come off the bench and outscore all of them, and they win 2-0 late on, and it's the Isaac show. We don't know, but that's my take on the Liverpool attackers this week. So on to my team for game week 4, and that's pretty much how it's going to be. So Sarr and Cunha both ruled out, so they're now red flag. Well, they will be red flagged. They're probably not when this video goes live, but they will be because they're not going to be playing. Dorg obviously still stays last man on the bench because even though I expect him to play, yeah. And obviously I've already made my transfer. Senesi came in for Cuyper. It's going to be peak FPL when Cuyper keeps a clean sheet and Senesi gets an own goal or something like that. But let's be honest, I'm due some luck, and the team on paper this week, I know the defense looks horrible, but the defense for the next few weeks outside of this week actually looks pretty good. So sometimes you've just got to roll with it, and maybe this is the week where the first time this season I look at my team and go, I don't really like it. Maybe this is the week where I top score of all my game weeks this season and Haaland goes absolutely ballistic, gets a hat-trick, and then all of a sudden I'm looking pretty. You just got to hope that, right? I don't think it's worth taking minus points, particularly with Europe starting. I think there's so many unknowns that we don't want to get too involved into all that at this moment in time. So my hot takes for game week 4. I think if you can field 11 this week, taking a hit might actually not be worth it. Now, I asked my card whether I should take a hit, well, on the FPL Cup pubcast, and it basically said, don't do it. So I'm going to roll with my 11 and just hope for the best. Don't be rushing to buy players who might get rotated when Europe comes. So, as I said before, we now know the big super clubs, they have very deep squads. If you are concerned about anyone's minutes and rotation with Europe now starting, or how teams are going to function with European competition as well, like Palace, like Forest, like, who's the other one that I'm missing there? Villa. Just don't buy them. Like, simply don't buy them. Buy players that are absolutely nailed, that potentially can cover them, etc., etc. This week, about 54% of managers in the game are likely to captain Mo Salah because that's why they had him to begin with. Maybe the real differential play and the play that could make you bulk rank this week is actually to steal a march on him and not captain Mo Salah. Now, if you've got him, obviously that's going to feel, you're going to feel like you should be captaining him. But if you don't, I wouldn't be panicking. I would sit there. If you've got Haaland like me, you are captaining Haaland against Manchester United this week. 100%. That team is obviously missing some big players, and I can just see Man City scoring a few goals. I can also see Man United scoring a few goals as well, let's be honest. The DC Daddies, shout out to FPL Nightmare on this one, probably aren't better than the good attacking defenders, provided the attacking defenders actually get an attacking return. But the thing to mention in between the debate about whether DC is better or attacking returns is better is that clean sheets are king. Now, if you've gone with the DC superheroes or whatever, and you're going with the likes of Agbadou and Anderson, they're not keeping clean sheets. So remember that if you, generally speaking, picking defenders from good defensive teams is the fundamental of getting good points consistently in your defense, because clean sheets are worth 4 points, DC points are worth 2. Keep that in mind. If you're on wildcard, don't be buying players that don't keep clean sheets. Don't buy a Fulham defender. Don't buy a Wolves defender. I could keep going on. Just use your head. Don't be buying players. And I know, Trig, this one's aimed directly at you, mate. Anderson will not keep more than 7 clean sheets this season. You don't want him in your team. Be aware that there will be surprise benchings following the international break as well. That is 100% going to happen. I can guarantee it. It's just going to happen because this is what happens after international breaks. It just is. So just be prepared for it. Make sure you've got at least some coverage on your bench. Hopefully one playing on the bench. So on to my score predictions for this weekend, and I've decided to add this section in. So just in case everyone's thinking, and I actually put this in, I do ESPN footy tipping, so I'll whack it in there. I think Arsenal are going to lose 1-0 to Nottingham Forest. You might call me an idiot, but because I've got double Forest defence, but I could just see that. It's the early kickoff. I could definitely see that happening. I've gone with a 2-0 win over Brighton for Bournemouth. I just think that Bournemouth are a better team, and they're at home. I think they'll be good. They've looked pretty good defensively so far this season as well. I've gone with a 2-0 win against Sunderland for Crystal Palace as well. I think they'll have too much. Sunderland, obviously we saw them travel away to Burnley. Didn't concede like huge amounts of XG or whatever in that game, but I just think that Palace will have too much to get the job done there. Everton versus Aston Villa. I'm going to go with Villa to finally find some form and to beat Everton 2-1. Now, they've got a very good record away at Everton, so just read into that what you want. So I'm hoping that this is the week where my Ollie Watkins finally does something in my team. Obviously, Ndiaye potentially could be out for Everton as well, and obviously Brantwaite's out as well. I forgot to mention that in the presses before. I'm going with a Fulham 1, Leeds 1 game. I mean, Fulham just specialise in 1-1 games, so I'm just going with Leeds getting some sort of fluky goal. Fulham not being able to score many goals themselves, and I'm going to go with 1-1 there. Newcastle 3 versus Wolves 0. Now, I'd done this prediction prior to learning that Whistle was out, and I didn't bother to change it. I still think they'll win 3-0. I think they've got way too much for Wolves, and Wolves have out Jorgen Strand and I don't think I've got any hope of scoring. Then I'm going for West Ham to win 2-1 at home against Spurs. I just think that West Ham get the job done. They do. For Spurs, West Ham are a bogey team for them, historically speaking, well, recently times. So I think that, another London derby, West Ham will be up for it. They've obviously got that 3-0 win against Forest in the last time out. I think that'll be great. I'm going to go with a very shock 0-0 Brentford versus Chelsea draw. Don't know why. Maybe it's because I got Collins in my defence. I'm not sure, but I'm going 0-0 draw there. I just think that Chelsea's players are going to be quite leggy, and their attackers are going to be quite leggy. So I think that we're going to see a bit of a disjointed performance. That's just me guessing more than anything else. I think Burnley will score against Liverpool, but they'll lose 3-1. And then I'm going with an absolute humdinger in the Manchester derby because I don't think either team can defend overly well. And we're going to go with Man City 4 and Man United 3. So yeah, those are my predictions. We're going to do them every week now as well. So hopefully you enjoy that. And yeah, you can see my line of thinking about what I'm going to see. And we'll cover how accurate I was in the Monday video next week. And on to everyone's favorite section of every video that I do during the week. And this is it, where it's 50-50% chance of being correct, being wrong, and the card to begin the season is on an 83% success rate in terms of either getting it correct or a draw. It's only got 4 calls wrong out of 24 so far this season. Let's see how well it goes today. I've had a lot of these sent in by people or just people asking questions about certain players, and I've matched them up against other ones. Let's find out what the card reckons this week. So remember, the player on the left is that side, the player on the right is that side. And first up, we got Joof versus Anderson, and the card has gone with Joof. I hope you're listening to that one, Trig. Xavi versus Enzo. Xavi. Henderson versus Vicario. Oh, that's interesting. Vicario. Gyökeres versus Watkins. Watkins. Haaland captain versus Salah captain. Oh, I'm very happy about that one. Haaland captain. Lacroix versus Munoz. Lacroix. Ekitike versus Isaac. Ekitike. And Virgil van Dijk versus Livramento. And it's gone with Livramento, probably based on the fact that I reckon that Newcastle are keeping a clean sheet and Liverpool are not. There you go. Those are your card calls. It's going to be interesting. Can the card do it again? Can it keep its success rate up? I certainly hope so, let's be honest. All right, and that brings to the end the last show of the week prior to the deadline stream, the late mail. Hopefully it's delivered all the relevant information, all the questions hopefully that you've got answered from this video. Again, if you've enjoyed that, if you want to ask the card some questions, make sure you drop in on the deadline stream tomorrow. It will be here, we'll be ready. It's got a pretty good success rate. Not so much for my team, but for everyone else's teams, it's been absolutely nailing it. So if you've enjoyed that, again, smash a like on the video, leave us a comment of card calls potentially you want on the deadline stream tomorrow, and I'll see you then, 9 o'clock in the morning. If you haven't already smashed that subscribe button, please consider doing so. I've been FPL D-Unit. I'm ready for Game Week 4. Bring it on, baby. Let's go.